all year round.
It's so mysterious.
This is who we are.
This is who we are.
WAVR.
WADR, promoting dialogue.
Good afternoon and many thanks for staying tuned to West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM and around the world on WADR.org. This is NEWSLINK. Here are the top stories. The French government announces repatriation of its ambassador and diplomatic staff as it ceases military cooperation with Niger. Mali calls for international support at UN Assembly to restore peace and combat terrorism in the Sahel. Concerns mount in Liberia as former warlord causes eliciting fear and panic ahead of elections.
If you think they will see this election, you will not lie. Because if you do it, that's the end of this country.
And a civil society organization, SERAP, calls on President Tinubu to probe $15 billion missing oil revenues. Stay with us for details of these stories and more.
Here is Tawfiq Abdul Nasser with NEWSLINK. Many thanks for joining us and a warm welcome to our listeners in Liberia, Ghana and the Gambia. Let's begin with an update on the Niger crisis, where France is preparing to repatriate its ambassador and the remaining diplomatic personnel present in Niamey within the next few hours. The French head of state, who claims to have spoken with the deposed President Mohamed Bazoum, earlier also announced that France will end its military cooperation with Niger. Here is an excerpt of his speech.
J'ai eu cet après-midi le président Bazoum, parce que
I had President Bazoum this afternoon because the only legitimate authority in Niger is President Bazoum, who was elected by his people and who is now held hostage and the object of this coup d'etat because he was carrying out courageous reforms and because there are likely ethnic and political settlements. And so I told President Bazoum that in the next few hours, our ambassador with several diplomats will return to France, and we are ending our military cooperation with the Nigerian authorities because they no longer want to fight terrorism. The withdrawal of the French military will be organized in time, in the coming weeks. But this is the end of this cooperation. Because we are not there to participate in the political life, to be the hostages of some sort of postages, I will be very clear. They will come in an orderly way in the coming weeks and months. And we will work with the postages because we want it to be done in peace. But by the end of the year, we will continue to support the African continent to fight against terrorism. If it is at the request of democratically elected powers and regional authorities. In 2023, there will be no more French soldiers in Niger. We are not here to participate in coup d'etats or to interfere. We are here to fight terrorism.
Et donc, moi, je suis très inquiet par cette région.
President Emmanuel Macron speaking there. Meanwhile, the Malian state over the weekend reiterated its priorities to include the restoration of peace and security across the country. Speaking at the ongoing UN General Assembly in New York, Mali's Minister of Foreign Affairs, Abdoulaye Diop, also solicited international support to end terrorism in the Sahel. He emphasized the financing and proliferation of firearms in the region as major factors responsible for the surge in recent attacks. Amid the rising insecurity, Abdoulaye Diop stresses that the transitional government is on track for good governance.
President, peace and security remain the priority for the people of Mali and the Sahel. The Malian people has now resumed greater trust and confidence in its defence forces. The people of Mali are encouraged by the results in combating the terrorist armed groups and their foreign state sponsors. Mali denounces, once again, with great force, the interference of certain powers who continue to facilitate the criminal activities of terrorist armed groups in Mali and in the Sahel. Mali is aware of the fact that military action alone cannot sustainably eradicate the complex challenges linked to terrorism and certain problems linked to the governance of the country. This is why the government has endowed itself with an integrated strategy, including political and institutional reform, development, specific concerns for youth, women, including employment, and their representation in decision-making bodies at local and national levels. To put the conditions in place allowing us to achieve the deepest aspirations of the Malian people for change, the government has committed itself to implementing political and institutional reforms which will be necessary for the reorganization of the state.
Mali's Minister of Foreign Affairs, Abdoulaye Diop, speaking there.
Fresh and breaking news all the time. Hear it first as the news breaks, only on West Africa Democracy Radio. NEWSLINK continues.
Now, Liberian citizens are growing alarmed by the escalating threats to their country's peace emanating from certain followers of the major opposition party. Price Johnson, a former warlord who infamously captured and killed the country's former president, Samuel Kedo, on camera during the 1990s, recently issued a menacing warning. He threatened to instigate a form of violence reminiscent of the Arab Spring should the government interfere with the upcoming elections. WADR's Darlington Popper has a report.
The former warlord issued a stark warning to the ruling regime, cautioning them not to interfere with the election results, emphasizing that doing so would spell the end of their administration. Adding to the tension, another notorious war general, Joshua Milton Blahi, commonly known as General Bonnecket, declared himself as a general of the main opposition, and he called on the government not to undermine the electoral process. Amidst mounting public condemnation, the main opposition leader Joseph Boakai asserted that Liberia's existence will be in jeopardy if the government tamper with the elections results.
It is said that the thing that is chasing you, if it doesn't stop running, you can't stop running. And that's why we are saying, if you think they will see this election, you will not lie. Because if you do it, that's the end of this country. We're not going to allow that to happen.
These statements have left many Liberians disappointed with the main opposition leader.
This notion that if it's not you, then the whole country should burn down. I dare you. They're only in this thing for themselves. We will not go back to war. We will preach peace. We will preach fair, credible, and transparent elections.
You claim Liberians are suffering and you want to rescue them. But if you don't, then you put them back in the worst position. So if you can rescue them, then you must take them back to war. So what do you want to rescue really? Yourselves? Your pockets? Because it cannot be about the Liberian people. They're dead serious. But even our international friends know the severity.
The Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, has expressed deep concerns over the increasing interest in the destabilizing the country's peace. In a recent statement, ECOWAS noted its apprehension about political actors issuing threats and urgent to seek legal remedies in a case of electoral disputes. For NEWSLINK on the West Africa Democracy Radio, I'm Darlington Popper in Monrovia.
In an effort to uphold transparency and justice, the Socio-Economic Rights and Accountability Project, SERAP, has issued a plea to Nigeria's President Bola Tinubu to investigate the reported disappearance of $15 billion and 200 billion naira in oil revenues, as disclosed by Nigeria Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative. Kolawole Oladare, the deputy director of the organization, implored President Tinubu to establish a presidential inquiry panel. This panel's mission will be to identify and publicly condemn those responsible for this embezzlement pursue legal actions against them and strive to recover the stolen funds. Abuja correspondent Usman Umar reports.
Last week, the Nigeria Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative, NETI, an agency established in 2003 following Nigeria's commitment to the Global Extractive Industry Transparency Initiative, made a startling revelation. They disclosed that over 15 billion United States dollars in oil revenues and 200 billion naira allocated for refinery repairs were unaccounted for between 2020 and 2021. In response to this revelation, the Socio-Economic Rights and Accountability Project, SERAP, is urging President Tinubu to take action. SERAP is calling for the establishment of an investigative panel to identify those responsible for the missing funds. They have given the president a 7-day ultimatum to act on this recommendation, or they will pursue a legal action. In an exclusive interview with WADR, Leslie Archison-Way, a development economist, highlights the critical importance of the president heeding SERAP's recommendation.
Right now, we are having liquidity challenge, and the only way to sustain liquidity, to mop up liquidity, among other ways, is to go after these people who have plundered, embezzled what belongs to the Nigerian people. By so doing, the government will be able to, mobilize revenue for critical infrastructure. We can't continue this way, where some individuals will presume that they are more Nigerians than others. Under the previous administration, towards the tail end of the administration, there was a lot of high level of corruption. This level of corruption cannot be swept under the carpet.
Nigeria has unfortunately witnessed numerous instances of vast sums of public funds being stolen or going missing. Regrettably, many of these revelations have been swept under the rug without any accountability or action taken against the perpetrators. For NewsLink on West Africa Democracy Radio, Usman Umar reporting from Abuja.
In Ghana, the 3-day Occupy Jolobi protest organized by the Fixed Country movement in the capital Accra has concluded. This protest garnered significant media attention and received coverage both locally and internationally. The protest saw almost all Ghanaian celebrities, music and movie stars trooping to the streets to join thousands of youth to demonstrate against the government over issues of unemployment, economic hardships and corruption, among others. Atinwin Mbilalosin in Accra reports that the youth defied heavy rains and adverse weather conditions to register their displeasure.
The protest commenced on Thursday, coinciding with the birthday of Ghana's first president, OSIWA, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. The initial day saw a chaotic scene with police arresting some protesters and assaulting others. However, the momentum continued to build as more young people joined the protest on the second and third days, with even Ghanaian music icon Stonebwoy expressing his support and speaking to journalists.
The motorway with the tolls that have been taken from years. I lost my knee to the accident on a motorway. Yeah, it's a major reason that I can never forget. I walk with a titanium knee replacement in my leg. How can I ever forget that happened to me? And even up to today, people still die off of the motorway, tires are blasting and all of that. Have we not raised enough revenue to be able to fix the motorway that Kwame Nkrumah built from yesteryears? And I'm not standing here in the name of MPP, NDC, or CPP, or KKP. I stand here in the name of Ghanaians.
On the final day, the convener of the hashtag Fix the Country movement, Oliver Barker-Vumowo, addressed the sizable crowd in the media. He emphasized that Ghana's youth have demonstrated the spirit of activism inherited from their forebears and are ready to advocate for a Ghana that functions properly.
Together we have shown Ghana that the call for justice and freedom cannot be silenced, no matter the odds that are stacked against us. For the people of Ghana, I want to remind you that the youth you see today occupying Jolobi House are purchasing tomorrow's freedom for your sake and for tomorrow's sake. By their blood and the tears they have shed today, we have exemplified the enduring spirit of the OSIWA Kwame Nkrumah, Patrice Lumumba, Thomas Sankara, the vision of yesterday's leaders for a prosperous and socially just Africa still resonates in our hearts. The vision of yesterday's leaders continues to resonate in our hearts.
As of now, the government has yet to provide a direct response to the concerns raised by the protesters. Reporting for NewsLink on West Africa Democracy Radio, I am Atiewin Imbila Lawson in Accra.
You're listening to NewsLink on West Africa Democracy Radio 94.9 FM, Dakar, Senegal. Here is a reminder of our top stories. The French government announces repatriation of its ambassador and diplomatic staff as it ceases military cooperation with Niger. Mali calls for international support at UN Assembly to restore peace and combat terrorism in the Sahel. Concerns mount in Liberia as former warlord causes eliciting fear and panic ahead of elections. And a civil society organization, SERAP, calls on President Tinubu to probe $15 billion missing oil revenues. Still ahead is the press review, guest interview, and sports update. Stay with us.
West Africa Democracy Radio. It's you speaking.
Let's now head to Burkina Faso as the transitional government launched the construction of a tomato processing plant in the country's commercial capital, Bobo Dioulasso. This is the first project of community-based entrepreneurship through popular shareholding, an initiative launched in June by the transitional authorities. Details with Oge Obi-Erika in this report by Ouagadougou correspondent Martin Kaba.
Just 3 months after its launch, the Community Entrepreneurship Initiative, based on popular shareholding, is already yielding positive results in Burkina Faso. With funds collected from subscribers, the country's transitional president is spearheading the construction of a tomato processing plant in the economic capital, Bobo Dioulasso, under the leadership of Captain Ibrahim Traoré.
It is the realization of an ideology that we are developing. Captain Thomas Sankara said, "Dare to invest the future, and we will throw by us and for us." So that's what motivated us to launch in this indigenous development. 3 months later, we are going to put the first stone. It is very important because there is a desire in the subscription.
This initiative aims to engage the population in the nation's development project. The construction of the plant is expected to take approximately 6 months, offering much-needed relief to the communities and economic stakeholders in the Hot Basins region.
As a farmer, these are the products that we are offered. If you produce dairy and you have a processing unit on site, it allows you to produce more in quantity and quality. A very strong rate of unemployment reduction is due to the high rate of banditry in the region. Today, we can say that we are working against underdevelopment.
Projections indicate that the plant will have the capacity to produce 5 tons of tomato paste per hour, with an estimated construction cost of 5 billion CFA francs, entirely financed through popular subscriptions in Burkina Faso.
Oge Obi-Erika voiced that report by Ouagadougou correspondent Martin Kaba.
This is the newspaper review. Stay on top of the news. Get the most important stories with added insight and concise review.
This is the newspaper review.
Osman Umar in Abuja joins us now with the major headlines from the Nigerian dailies.
Hello and welcome to the press review segment. Today we'll start with the Guardian newspaper, leading with this banner headline. Despite 2.8 trillion naira subsidy, power averages 3,000 megawatts in 10 years. This report right here is taking a look at the issues in the power and electricity sector of Nigeria. Just below that, you have this story. Private sector, civil society organizations kick as Nigeria Labour Congress decide on indefinite strike tomorrow. This, of course, is an update on the ongoing conversations around industrial action being proposed by the Nigeria Labour Congress and TUC. Let's quickly move move over to the Nation newspaper, leading with the story that says federal government steps up action against rising insecurity. With a rider, president gives marching order. Ohaneze is the socio-cultural organization of the Igbos from the southeast of Nigeria, while Arewa Consultative Forum, which is a socio-cultural group from the northern part of Nigeria, raised dust over kidnapping. We quickly move over to the Vanguard newspaper that is highlighting the issue of the NLC strike. Leading with this story, NLC battles organized private sector over stand on planned nationwide strike. Of course, the organized private sector has been against an indefinite strike, saying that indefinite strike at this point in time will cripple the economy. And this has been a back and forth conversation between the Nigeria Labour Congress trying to drag in the private sector, the banking sector, the manufacturing sector, and other relevant sectors of the economy to also join the strike so that it will have the needed bite to get the government to do the needful with regards to bringing up quick interventions that will cushion the hardship being faced by the citizens as a result of removal of fuel subsidy by the current administration. This is the much we have for you on today's edition of Press Review. It's back to you in the studio. My name is Usman Umar from Abuja.
Politics, analysis on major news, social matters, and all. This is A Guest.
Our guest focus is on our earlier report regarding the French president's government's preparation to repatriate its ambassador and the remaining diplomatic personnel present in Niamey. The French head of state, who claims to have spoken with the deposed president Mohamed Bazoum earlier, also announced that France will end its military cooperation with Niger. This development has sparked some public debate on what informed the decision of the French government. Joining us on this is Ni Adekunu, an international relations expert.
Well, it cost it because he failed to realize that Niger is a sovereign country and Niger doesn't have to listen to anybody when it is making its diplomatic decision. In fact, it is the entitlement mentality of the French government that has allowed this kind of frosty diplomatic relationship to exist between both countries. After the military took over, even if you want to refer to them as illegitimate authority, but they are still the authority that the people in that country want and have accepted. So it behooves you to either decide to work with the people that are in charge right now, or you get your butt out of there. It is the height of disrespect to the entire people of Niger Republic that even after they have told him that Sylvain Ite should leave, he said they will not do anything of that nature, that they will only want to listen to Bazoum. So he understood very clearly that there are lots of things that are happening right now that may not favor them, because even Scandinavian countries have been criticizing the relationship of France and these former colonies. Why did he not do what he has done?
Right. So since this news broke out, this has sparked a public debate. People have been wondering what actually informed this decision. You know, right from the beginning, France was adamant on doing that, like you mentioned in your earlier submission. So what do you think informed this decision?
Well, I think that nobody should even lose sleep over the position of France regarding now. But what the entire Africa should watch out is that there will be an increase in the sponsorship of rebels, the same way they sponsored rebels to kill Gaddafi in Libya. And if you know what happened after the invasion of Libya and the death of Gaddafi, Mr. Sarkozy, who was the then Prime Minister or President of France, suffered the most unbearable of disgrace till he left that office. I'm simply saying here that African countries must do everything in their power to not allow the continuation of this. And I need to say that everybody should go about their businesses as if nothing happened, because that is the way to treat people that are characteristically despotic and unthinking in the things they do. So for me, other countries should learn. And if you look at it, you permit my digression, which is you may have to agree with me that the United Nations General Assembly, especially the presentation done by Burkina Faso, was obvious and is an attestation to the complete disregard that they really have for France and what it has done against African people. And that is a fact of the matter.
So finally, what do you think this means for France, especially like you mentioned in your earlier submission that the French government had this entitlement forgetting that Niger is a sovereign state. So what would be your recommendations?
Well, it simply means that if France is really ready to do business with the former colonies, the bondage template they've been operating must be discarded. France must approach the former colonies now from a point of view of mutual respect and dignity. I need to say that the template France has been running has simply not changed since the era of colonialism. So right now, France must do everything possible to rewrite the books. And I'm going to make very strong recommendations here that I'd like the world to listen. Every reserve of France, every reserve of former colonies must be taken away under France control. Our former French colonies must have the right to choose where they want to domicile their foreign reserve. The conversation around France having right of refusal over every mineral resource, for instance, from the former French colonies must end. You cannot say that if any new mineral is found in your former colonies, then this new mineral must be introduced to you first before any other country. I think that is one of the greatest bondage that any African country has experienced in the hands of France.
Adeni Kunu is an international relations expert. Sankule Janko joins us now with Sports Update.
Hello out there, a warm welcome and thank you for joining us. The World Football Governing Body FIFA has imposed transfer ban on Ghanaian top side Hearts of Oak over unsettled debt to former coach Slavkov Matic. This comes following the club's failure to settle debts owed to the side. It is reported that the Ghanaian Premier League club failed to pay their former tactician an outstanding debt of $14,000. FIFA also ordered the Ghanaian Football Association to implement the ban at the national level. Matic was abruptly sacked by Hearts in March 2023. In response to the escalating tension, Matic filed a formal complaint to FIFA, who ruled in his favor, instructing the Ghanaian football club to compensate their former coach with $14,000 for breaching his contract. The ban is currently in force, preventing the club from registering new players until they fulfill their outstanding financial obligation to Matic, according to media reports. And that's it for sports. It's back to you.
We have come to the end of this edition of NewsLink from West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Thank you for listening, and many thanks to Inyas Bilimu and Maudo Ju for the technical assistance. Do interact with us via social media platforms X, formerly Twitter and Instagram, at WADR News, on Facebook, West Africa Democracy Radio English Service. I'm Taufik Abdul Nasir. Good afternoon.
And many thanks to you for listening to NewsLink via Hot 104.3 FM, Newmi FM 94.0, and Veritas Radio 102.9 in Banjul, the Gambia. We also appreciate our listeners in Liberia via Alternative Youth Radio 98.9 FM, Lofa County. For you listening via Radio Pad 95.1, Damango, Savannah region, and on Royals